Here is another theorist of child development, Erik Erikson, with his stages of psychosocial development. He's actually a follower of Freud, with his focus is social influence rather than dream interpretation and the like. He is actually a stage theorist, and his main concern is on crisis resolution. So, according to him, crisis must be resolved at each stage, because if not, an individual may lack positive characteristics in the stage, and it may result to a more damaging personality in the latter years. So here are the stages of child development according to Erik Erikson. The first one is trust versus mistrust, which appears from birth to 1 year. It's the time when the needs of the infants are being met and the basic trust develop, especially the loving relationship it's formed with whoever is present with the child, especially those who are feeding the child at the time, because it's the most important event in their life. So as we can see, infants gaze at their mother as they are being breastfed, and this is the most important time of their life. So if the child's parents are absent during this time, the tendency of the child is to form attachment to whoever is present. It could be the grandparents or the caregiver. So the next one would be autonomy versus shame and doubt. And this occurs from 1 to 2 years old. At this stage, the kid learns to do things for oneself, for himself, and by himself, as the development of physical activities starts, example, walking, crawling, reaching, and most of the questions they ask, who, where, and what, because they are trying to familiarize themselves with the things around them. Well, of course, there might be some questions like how to do things. Another important event here is the toilet training. So that's the time of a little of discovery. Next one, the initiative versus guilt stage. This occurs from 3 to 5 years. By this time, the kid enters school as preschoolers and learn to initiate tasks. The favorite question would be a little of how and why things happen, because they start to analyze the things and explain the things that are going on around them. And it's also the time when they become more independent from their parents and start to socialize with other kids at school. Okay, so the next one would be competence or industry versus inferiority. At this stage, the child is already 6 years until puberty, and children complete their tasks by themselves and learn to do things on their own. And the most important event in their life is, well, the events that happen in school, because most of their time they spend it on school. And the most important question is, what is inferiority complex? Why is that? Because it's the time when a child compares himself to other people. It's also the time when he can see the difference between one and the other. He can appreciate the different characteristics of other person, and maybe dislike the characteristics he may have. So this is the beginning of a crucial stage of a child's life, and it may continue to the next stage, which is identity versus role and role confusion during the teens until early 20s. because at this time the teens refine to their sense of self, so they begin to identify themselves as they are, apart from their parents. They began to establish their own identity, and they try to test their new roles and incorporate them into new identity. And well, the question is to know anyone that is very different now and versus the time when they were pre-teens, such as 10, 11, and 12 years old, because the most important event of this kid's life is forming relationships with friends. At this time, they identify themselves more with friends than their parents, because they share similar habits, similar likes and dislikes with the people around them who are also their companions, the kids. The next one is intimacy versus isolation. It's the time when they enter adulthood at their 20s until 40s. Well, still young adults though. They develop intimate relationship. They try to find their mates. They try to be much closer with the opposite sex or opposite gender, and well, starting to create closer relationship, bond with them, preparation for marriage, gaining the capacity for intimate love, and the most important event during this time is forming strong relationship, especially with the opposite gender. Okay, again, this for the purpose of, well, marriage. That will lead to the next stage, which is generativity versus stagnation. Okay. So at this stage, they identify themselves as middle-aged, 40s to 60s, who discover a sense of contribution to the world. Okay, why? Because they are the workers, they are the breadwinners, they are those who provide for the family, and oftentimes, of course, they satisfy this desire. Some of them don't get married, okay, and some of them are already married, so they are the supporting and satisfying group for the future generation. The most important event in this life is parenting, for most, and for others who don't who stay single blessed, then well, maybe that is what I call stagnation. They are stuck in another stage of their life, meaning it's not fulfilled. Okay, so the next one, okay, the 60 plus stage. Okay, this is actually the last stage, and as they reflect on what they did in their past life, did they contribute to the world? And of course, if they did, they would have sense of fulfillment or integrity. And maybe if not, if they were not able to do everything that must be done at each stage, they might feel they might be in despair. Okay, so what are the evaluations of Erikson's theory? Accordingly, this theory attempted to show development throughout lifespan. Well, it's more on descriptive stage than an explanatory stage. Well, according to some critics, and in this theory, children and adults may overcome problems that occur during development. Okay, so this is about Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, and others in the next video.